Hey everybody, we're back again. Once with our three old friends. Music never ends. Talking about our mixtapes, and this week we're taking a slightly different approach. I guess we've been making changes here and there throughout the last one where we did a free form, but this one I decided we should go back to our roots a little and give people a little insight into how this kind of all came together and how we how we came up with this concept, and really was kind of the pinnacle of, as I look at it, as one of the pinnacles of our mixtape making days, so to speak, where we all came together, and Mike had just kind of joined the group. Joined the group, two of us. Dave and I have been making mixtapes for a couple of years now, and when I met Mike up in Dallas, and then he came down, and then he wasn't interested in doing it. I don't know, Mike, did I approach you about doing it, or did we come to you about that?
I don't remember. What I think probably happened is you played a lot of those tapes back when you were at the Chronicle and at the Richland in Dallas, and so I heard some of that stuff. You may have even lent one to me, but it must have come up at some point. And so yeah, I don't know if you didn't invite me, I'd probably like, hey.
No, I
I
probably
won't do
did.
that.
You had good musical taste. That's awesome.
Sometimes
Well,
I'll
and
own
that,
it. Sometimes
yeah.
not. Maybe.
And then when you moved to Austin, it obviously became a lot easier for, like, hey, why don't all three of us make a mixtape? And I think this one we had made a couple before. I'm assuming we had made a couple because this wasn't the first time we had all come together. But Dave and I frequently went to Austin to go hang out with George Davis, our friend, and Tom Topol, and we played on their softball team. Did you remember that, Dave? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we play on the team, and I think this one was kind of extra special because we played a softball game. We played in the intramurals, and we only had 8 players, and we beat a team in the playoffs or something crazy like that. Was that game?
I think so.
I think
I think that was it
some.
because we only played in like 3 or 4 games. I remember. I mean, it
Oh
wasn't
no, we
like
played a lot more than that. We were up there quite a
really.
bit because we would our routine would go up Friday night, play, hang out, or play Saturday, and then maybe this was just me, and then stay Sunday to watch the Cowboys, and then George would always cook breakfast, and so we'd spend our maybe about 4 or 5, at least 4 or 5 times that week. You might be right, 3 or 4 or 5, but this was one of those that we won the game, so we were excited. So we must have been up there, and Mike must have been there, and so we must have said, and that's why I don't remember if it was done in Austin or in San Marcos, but it was one of the two places. And this is weird. I just don't remember Mike ever coming to San Marcos and being in my apartment. Isn't that weird?
Man, I was there all the time.
That tells you where I was at. Yeah, Dave was there all the time.
We definitely made some tapes there. I remember that.
Okay, so I'm gonna say this was made in San Marcos, and
I think it was.
We must have come down because I think Danny Gamboa was with us. He came to play, and that's how we had 8 players, and it was weird. So anyway, back to the tape. Of course, so we came up with it. Mike was becoming involved in it, and of course, like I said, this to me is one of the best tapes that we made because what it did was it brought Mike's influence into it. David had been doing these for the last 2 years, so we kind of knew our routine. We had our things. We were talking earlier about going to Apple. We'd find new music. We'd put it on. We'd think of different concepts. And then when Mike came, it added a whole new dimension, and he exposed us to a whole new music, whole brand of different music. And I think that kind of re-energized Dave and I because we were kind of like, oh, we'll do this. But then when you came up, with songs, and we'll get to them on the playlist, the Pretenders, and of course, all the songs that you brought to the thing, How the West was one, and I think Dave and I were like, oh my God, maybe we subliminally probably like, hey, we got to step up our game, or we
Right. We gotta,
right?
we gotta come up with something different instead of the same old thing. So yeah, it energized us for sure. And it was like I said, I'm trying to recall back when I first when you first introduced me to Mike, because it was probably a little bit before this, but really even over those several years, Mike and I and you only crossed paths you know, a few times. I mean, probably like 8 or 10 times or something like that. It wasn't like that many times. So over the years, it was like I always knew who Mike was. Always, you know, we hung out a few times. We made some tapes. We did some stuff together. But I'm glad that we've come back together all these years later. You know, we've said it before, kind of getting sentimental with all that kind of stuff. But I've actually gotten to know Mike a lot better just through doing this. What we're doing here, making the playlist and everything else. And but yeah, our memories are all off a little bit for sure. Looks like that tape that's behind you looks like it's been an archaeological find or something that you had to.
Oh, I've kept this tape around for a long time. It's and it'd be in my car for like months, maybe even year, because it was always one of those go-to tapes. Like, oh yeah, this one. I love this tape, you know, because again, I own over 500 tapes. So of course, when you know you're getting the most play, when it's in my car all the time, that means it's one of the top of the list. So, and of course, because it did have that infusion of what I'll call, for lack of a better phrase, the Mike music. Mike brought his music to it, and so I think that's what it was always intriguing. Plus, the songs are just fantastic, and we'll get into the whole song. But Mike, were you at all? How did you approach it? I mean, when you're like, hey.
Well, yeah, I wanted to kind of like introduce you guys to some stuff I was listening to. And, you know, I had, excuse me, I probably by that point had about 300 or 400 albums. Sadly, most of those are gone for various reasons I do not want to talk about. One of my bitter things.
No, I got
but
same.
I was looking at this list and I have some of the records that this tape was made off of. I still have them. They're probably pretty scratched, but the Joe Jackson one, the Elvis Costello, probably the Pretenders one too. So yeah, you can see those three names, which we're going to talk about some more. Those are like more, I guess, they're not really contemporary. By this time, it was the late '80s, but it was maybe a little bit different than the kind of stuff you guys have been playing. I don't know. I haven't heard all your stuff, all your tapes, and I just wanted to kind of introduce some of that. You know, whatever. That was like, this is me. This is what I do, and it was hit or miss because I know some other ones, some of the songs I put on I thought were great. Maybe they didn't go over so well. But yeah, that's kind of where I was coming from.
Okay.
So this is about 37 years ago. Is that what we're saying? Like 87
sure.
Yeah.
time frame. So
it has to be running. The reason I narrowed down, and Mike, you narrowed it down because you didn't move there till when?
87. And I know I'm almost certain that in January of 87, and I'm almost certain we had stopped, or at least I had not been involved anymore by about mid 1989. I think that was maybe the last time I'd been at your apartment. We all kind of started well, you guys started graduating. I had a ways to go yet. But yeah, I think kind of the interest had waned in doing this to an extent. So we kind of just, it faded away.
I narrowed it down because, and we'll get right into the tape. That John Lennon Live in New York City came out in '86. I looked it up, and I was a little bit obsessed with that album because I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. I was like, oh my God, John Lennon Live. And, you know, and we listened to it a lot. And Dave had bought that album. And I was like, man, I listened to it a lot. And so that's how I kind of really, so that kind of leads us into the first, like I said, this whole tape is really good. It's fantastic. There's a lot of highlights. And of course, it starts out with such a bang, you know, with the Pretenders, Talk of the Town. And true to Dave form, he gives it the old, you know, the town by. So we've had that theme going, and I went with New York City. But that Pretender song is really, you know, it's fantastic. And love the lyric, you've changed, and we always have that theme of, remember when we listened to it 37 years ago, now it means a whole lot different than what it means now. So
yeah, I was never really clear whether she wrote that. She had two bandmates who died in pretty quick succession. I think one was a drug overdose and one was related to some kind of substance abuse. Was it James Honeyman Scott and Pete Barndon or something like that? And they were really good, especially Scott. Yeah, and she had a relationship with one or both of them. And so I always wondered if this was maybe about one of them. This album was the one that I don't know. I think it was their second album, but it might have been the first. The first two albums I loved. They were all kind of that more on the edge of punk, kind of a little bit. Then the third album after the guys died, that's when they had Back in the Chain Gang, and it seemed like they were much more mainstream. I never really got into that record. But yeah, those first two I loved. I met them. I've mentioned this before. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else on this list that I did this with, but I used to, all I can call it is stalking. After concerts, whoever I was with, we'd kind of pull around the back where the limos would come out and then follow them to figure out what hotel they were at.
Oh my God.
And then go in.
Wow. Wow.
So we went in, and Christy Hines, she had a baby at that point. I think it was the baby with Ray Davies from the Kinks. He wasn't there. I met him on another stalking adventure. Anyway, I never could think of what to say. And so we're like, hi, it was like Christy Hine. She kind of walked up, she's like, I got to get up to my room to my baby. And I'm like, oh, no, it's a good show. And then we go over to, this is in the Hyatt Regency in Dallas. And we go over to the other section, the other three guys we're sitting at the bar kind of in this, and we go up, we say something like, hey guys, a great show, whatever. And so we actually talked to them for a little bit. They still had the original drummer and then the two new guys. And as we were about to go, they go, cheers. So that's about the most conversation I got out of any of those events. The worst was Ray Davies is like, boy, I'd like to have picked his brain or something, and it's like, hi. And then he goes in, he like paused, like, do you want to say something else? And I was like, good show.
Well, it really kicked
Turn
off.
back time.
It really kicked off the this tape really well, and then Dave with This Town, and then New York City, which this version on this mixtape is a little different because on the tape it's the actual live version, and I didn't use the live version. And someone bumped into the record at one point, which was a classic. So when you listen to this tape, you hear at the beginning someone bumped into it, so we kept it, which was always kind of our trademark anyway. So I wish we'd have kept that. And then of course, and like I said, and then Mike continued with his Joe Jackson. And of course, Dave and I had never heard any of this kind of stuff. We're like, oh shit, here we go. So, just a fan. And then here at the Western War, Steely Dan, and that was a Dave pick, wasn't that yours, Dave?
It was, yeah, and it probably was at the time. It was one of those deals where, like, I have the album, I kind of know the songs, but I don't remember the songs, kind of even at that point, So I went, when you went Wild West, I'm like, I'm probably just looking at the album, going, oh, here at the Western World, let's try this one, right? Even though, maybe I didn't think of know the song all that well. But
oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, but when I listened to this this thing back, I played it 3 or 4 times in the last week, and it's just amazing how everything just kind of flows. So it's like the synergy there between all three of us is amazing. I think that's what is making the tape so good, and then also our friendship so good. Now that I look back on it all these years, it's like, wow, yeah, we have a lot of commonality, and even though we're turning each other on to new and different music, it flows so well, and we were playing off each other, either title or style or something, and it just kind of flows. So that first, the first several songs in a row, Talk of the Town, This Town, Elton John, and then New York City, the doing those three. And this Town, I didn't remember that song until I heard it this week. And I'm like, it's a cool song. In fact, it could have gone on our funky Good Times one too, with all the horns and all the stuff that's going on in that song. And then with New York City, I just want to touch on that real quick. Man, this is like a classic rock and roll song. right? I mean, the way that the beat of it and the groove of that song, and then he gets into the piano at the end. It's like Jerry Lee Lewis or something, you know, just a classic rock and roll song. And then again, like like Jose said, I hadn't been turned on to Joe Jackson, but loved the Wild West song, and then here at the Western World. I will say one last thing before I know I'm rambling on. I was looking at the lyrics of these songs as I was listening to them, so I'm watching all of the lyrics, and this probably could never have happened. So, like in this town, there's a lyric in there that says they tap the pavement with their canes. Elton John, he says that in this town. And then in here at the Western World, they say, we know this part, knock twice, rap with your cane. I'm like,
Oh, that's right.
how could there be two songs with the word cane in it that I put on? I mean, just think of the odds of that.
Oh, man.
I probably didn't think of it at the time, but as
No
I
one
listened to the lyrics, I'm like, rap with your cane. Hey, Elton John said that in his song.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
Dave
Yeah.
in the weeds.
This town I hadn't heard before that. I don't think I ever had this record. But once we did this, like, oh yeah, I remember the song. I don't think I had heard it since. But yeah, definitely a good song. And New York City, that one I definitely remember. I never had that record either, but he like name drops a bunch of stuff in that song.
yeah.
You know, it was this period where he had just moved to New York, and he was under fire by trying to get deported by the Nixon administration, and he was in his like whatever the period where he wore a beret and an army jacket, like his I don't know, revolutionary, whatever. He and Yoko, but yeah, that was good. And
He said
let's see,
waiting
what
for
was it? Oh,
he said waiting for Jerry to land. Who was that? Jerry Garcia or was it somebody else?
No.
Jerry Rubin.
Jerry
Jerry
Rubin,
Rubin?
I think he was there. Right. It
Yeah.
was because it was 69, well, it was 72. So probably, I don't know, unless it was one of his friends, but I'd have to look it up.
And then he said David Peel. Who's David Peel?
Ah, Dave Peel used to be a guy like who used to write parody songs and stuff like that, and
Oh, okay.
anarchist
Then-
type
And then he
songs.
said Max's City. Max, who's Max? I think it was.
Is he
who's
talking
Max?
about Max's Kansas City, the club?
Well, he said Max's City. Put down the nitty gritty.
Right.
I'm trying to think who Max.
Yeah.
Is
I
it?
think they
Was
played
he
at
a-
Max's
was he a-
Kansas City, and that group was traveling around and playing the different clubs and stuff. And I think that's what that is.
They were the Elephants Memory Band.
Elephant's Memory, Elastic Ono.
Plastic Ono band.
Yeah.
Well,
And then,
go ahead.
oh, I was just saying I'll come back to the one I added, but here at the Western World, I was like, okay, Steely Dan, it's like so many of their songs, their lyrics are cryptic. They could be a couple of different things. Many of them have drug references. I read different, I was like trying to find out, what is this one about? I knew it was only, I think originally back in those days, it was only on one record because it wasn't released on an album. It was on a greatest hits record. They just kind of, it was from, I think maybe the Pretzel Logic sessions or Royal Scam or whatever, but yeah, anyway, I've heard those many times. I used to think, okay, it was about like some kind of seedy underground club, or maybe like a place where they also have prostitution, kind of sounds like. But then I started reading people's interpretations. There's another one that's like, it's literally about the West and all the corruption in the West. And another one was like, yeah, it's about an opium den or whatever. And who knows? Just if you like it, you like it.
Well,
And then Wild West.
go ahead.
Wild West was Joe Jackson, and he did it was his first record I got into. It was another one of these where I heard that and then went backwards and started, because he'd been recording for several years. Again, more stuff kind of on the edge of punk. And he, or maybe new wave, I don't know what you call it. He had all kinds of different styles. But I didn't realize this 2 years later, the whole record, I think it's called Big World, was actually recorded live, but either they had the audience be quiet or they somehow edited out all the audience sounds. So just what you hear is what they were actually doing in front of an audience. And that one, I remember that was my first favorite on that record, but there were several others. So yeah,
Okay. Well, a dog eats his dog. I love that. Anyway, that lyric is really good. Anyway,
so then
as
we
much
get to.
sy- oh, go ahead,
so
Dave.
I was gonna say, so then we get to France.
Well, I was gonna say, as much synergy as we had with the first song, everything just kind of went. And we'll all get to our chance to defend each of our choices, but we had the France, Christmas in Cape Town. Good luck, Mike. And Out There Tonight by Garfield, which I personally hate, but for some reason now I enjoy. When I used to play that Garfield album, man, I just wanted to kill. I was like, oh my god, this
Okay,
shit.
so I gotta say a couple things. So
Okay.
if we had a chance to revisit or go back, right now, let's replay this. So we got France. We already did the town, city, west, France. Okay, Mike, then you come in with Christmas in Cape Town. It has nothing to do with France. I guess there's French people in Cape Town, maybe, or something like that. But think for just a minute. You are big into Joni Mitchell. Joni Mitchell, what song could you play by Joni Mitchell after France? Do you know? Maybe
yeah. Free Man in Paris.
No, I wasn't thinking about. There's another one that's called "In France They Kiss on Main Street."
Yeah.
Well,
You know that one?
let me defend Mike by saying France should never be put on any tape or listened to ever again. No, that is the worst Grateful Dead song ever. And here I am thinking I'm some big deadhead, but the worst Grateful Dead song ever known to mankind. So Mike, Christmas in Cape Town. Good luck.
If you had gone with "In France They Kiss on Main Street," then I would have been able to put on Main Street by Bob Seger, and you never would have had to have the Out There Tonight. I would have followed right with it. I would have went, oh, Main Street. But
well, before Mike has to defend himself, how did you get from Christmas in Cape Town to Out There Tonight? See that what?
No, I didn't. But I will tell you. I know we're bouncing around. Mike will get to you in just a second. I do want to say though that if you look in the background here right now, what do you see?
What?
Or
do you see
the piano?
Right. Oh, what do you got? The Garfield?
You see that?
Well, angle it down a little bit. There you go. Garfield.
Okay. Now I will say that I didn't own this record until today.
Okay.
I was at a used market antique place rummaging through some records, and this album popped up.
Oh my god.
And for $4, I said, just so I can show it on the video here, I'm buying this thing again. So now I own Garfield again. Now, one last fact. Garfield's last name is French. Garfield French. So we get back to the France thing right there.
I'm sure that was intentional, right?
Okay, well, we've had our faux pas. Let's listen to, not that Christmas in Cape Town is a faux pas, but let's hear
talk about
one of the
Christmas
most
in Cape
crazy songs ever.
Wait. I want to go back to some of that. Is that all right?
What?
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I was rambling.
No, it's fine. Okay, so yeah, France, I agree, Jose.
It's just a bad
doesn't work for me. And in fact, that record is probably my least favorite Dead record. There's a couple songs on there I like, but Shakedown Street, I don't get the disco thing, and I'll just say that.
I'm not gonna give you the elitist yeah, they fucked up on that album, but who's listening to Shakedown? Who's listening to their albums?
Yeah, there you go. Well, I was. But and then okay, so here at the Western World, see, I thought this kind of thing was going, it's like the Western world, and then it's France, kind of we're going around the world. And so I go to Cape Town.
That makes sense.
That's what I am guessing. I don't remember this.
No,
but looking at this, I'm
you're
guessing
giving me way too much credit.
That's probably true. Okay, so the elephant in the room, Christmas in Cape Town, was something I would never put on a playlist now. even though I respect the song, I respect Randy Newman. If you know anything about South Africa, especially back in those days, well, pretty much back in the 80s, it was toward the end of the apartheid period, and there was a lot of racism going on. People were treated horribly. Nelson Mandela was still in jail, and Steve Biko was beaten to death by police, and there's all kinds of stuff. And so Randy Newman, on a lot of it, that's who did this Christmas in Cape Town. He did a lot of songs from the really ugly person's point of view, and by that I mean like somebody like a redneck, a racist, and he would just sing these like from that perspective. He did a whole record called Good Old Boys, which is a great record, but the same word is, and you can probably guess what it is, a racist thing is in this song too. And this is just some jerk in South Africa who's not getting it, but he's starting to feel the fear of people. The anger is rising and it's getting stronger. And he addresses that in the song. And all he can say about this, he's pissed off that it's not snowing at Christmas. You know, you can go out to the beach or whatever. One more thing about Randy Newman, when you think about like this kind of taking on this kind of character, which has pissed a lot of people off over time. One of the things that really made people mad was short people. It's like, why is he attacking short people? It's like, what a stupid thing to attack. And, you know, it was on the top 40 and all that. But the thing is, he's trying to say how stupid bigotry and alienating other people is. So he just picked the stupidest thing to, you know, persecute people of smaller height, height challenged people, as we might say today. So yeah.
Well, he's more known now to this generation as Toy Story guy.
Oh yeah, no, that's true. A lot of those soundtracks. And then I just will say a couple of words about Garfield. I don't like that one either. I remember back then, like, what?
Because I mean, tonight.
You know, it grows on you. It grows on you over the years.
The arrangement's not bad. It's pretty much the words that I have. It's like, okay, I get that he's talking about all these scenes of like people having hard times and stuff. And that's like, okay. But then at the end, he's like, so I'm going to kill myself tonight. Not in so many words. He's like, tonight I got to get the room all right because tonight I'm going home. You know, it's like, oh, dude, that is just too, you can't dance to that.
No, but it's still a decent, like Dave says, it grew on me. And now every time I hear it, I'm like, oh, okay. I listen to British Bulldog, you know, all the little lyrics that it sounds like, oh, okay. I
will say something about the album too. I mean, because a lot of times we just hear a song or a couple songs, and I've put I think 2 or 3 of these songs on tapes over the years, but this album is actually very, I mean, if you listen to it all the way through, all the tracks and all the songs, it's very well done. And I'm going to say something that you're going to probably laugh a lot about, but what's the difference between Richard Wright, Garfield French, Tony Banks, and Klaatu, which we're going to talk about later as well.
Okay.
Well, the difference is one has had worldwide success and had made millions of dollars, toured the world, you know, and had one of the greatest bands of all time. One was a great keyboard player for many groups, but for Genesis and these others, nothing. But what I'm saying is that when you really listen to all the things they're what they did, it's still artistic. It's very artistic and it's still very good. And in some cases they're doing symphonic kind of things. They're doing you know, things that if Paul McCartney did something with Admiral Halsey and did you know, whatever, that becomes a hit. But you do it over here, you try to do something like that, and you're like, that's a piece of garbage, right? So it's always just a matter of maybe timing, luck.
I don't know. I think he's more in the genre, and I think that's why you followed him up with the Randy Newman, the singular, because he didn't have a band, or it wasn't a band, or it was just him. And so I'll just put it this way: he's not as good as Elton John. And
No,
you
no.
can't compare him to Tony Banks or Richard Wright because they're part of a group, and he's out there on his own. Because let's face it, and Garfield's never written a Great Gig in the Sky or played on, so, and Tony Banks has written pretty good
Pretty
songs.
good song, pretty good. And
Just gonna throw that out there.
Richard Wright, he's done pretty well too. Yeah.
Yeah, so
But when you just listen to just like some of the soft piano parts, not the synthesizer parts or whatever, it's like, oh, that's very similar. It's not that different
no,
than what I mean. Richard Wright's piano playing in Summer of '68 or in it's just it's not. When you break it down, just listen to a couple of things, you're like, oh, okay. Or the difference between Alan Parsons doing Silence and I and an orchestra and Klaatu trying to do something like that. Well, it didn't quite catch on for Klaatu.
no.
Well, I want to, I guess, second your point there that it's not really fair to base your opinion on a band or whatever, a musician, because of one song. I haven't heard the whole record, and I'm not sure how. It might have caught on for me. And again, I like the arrangement, whatever. I think it's just kind of a downer. But you know what? I listen to a lot of downer music, so just whatever. It comes down to personal taste.
Right. Well, I think no one's questioning the guy's musical, aptitude on the piano. That's for sure. I mean, it's good, and the music's good. I have to admit it. Like you said, Mike, it's kind of some of the cheesy lyrics that are kind of in there. But Dave, no one's gonna. I all I'll say
And
is,
I like the voice. And the voice is like, I just like his voice. So it's like,
yeah,
why do people like Bob Dylan or they like,
right. Yeah, for
whatever.
sure.
And I'm like,
Yeah. Neil Young. Yeah. No.
Neil Young kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay. I think we've
I think
we're never going to agree to
beat the crap
disagree
out
on
of
that or so. But we got back on track and with another piano, nice song, a little gem that caught us back on track in Better Days by Graham Nash. And then the first side ended with Human Hands by Elvis Costello, which again, I've never been a huge Elvis Costello person. I don't have any of his albums. I don't listen to Elvis Costello all that much, but it's a good song. But Better Days, of course, is, and especially again, back to the theme of listen to it back then and listen to it now, and it has a whole different meaning. And of course, we all understand that. So, but Mike, I always appreciate when you put Elvis Costello on, so it would give me exposure to it. But believe me, the only time I ever heard was on SNL, and then you got thrown off. So,
Yeah. Better Days. I love Graham Nash and his music, all those guys in that, group of people, various incarnations. But this song I had not heard before this. And, I guess I kind of forgot it since then because I never had any of his records or CDs. And I heard that and like, why didn't I get into this? I love this song. We've all been through, it's about like, you're in love with somebody, but she's heading out and, you just got to kind of try to find the best out of it you can. And I've always wondered who this is about, because Joni Mitchell kind of dumped him pretty hard.
I'm going to say that. In fact, I think it's written in one of the books that I've read that's what this is about. So
and yeah, but it was a great song. Was it? Yeah. Let's see. This is you, Jose, and then Elvis Costello. I don't know. It is a pretty jarring contrast. That's kind of mellow piano, and then Elvis is more kind of fast paced. He was still. It was. I think it's off of Imperial Bedroom, which a lot of people cite as one of his best early albums, but that's debatable. But so he's really changing from that kind of radio and pump it up and all that stuff to where he was getting more to what he became later, which is more ballads. And this is kind of the middle ground. The only reason I can think I put it on here is because it's about 2 minutes long and it was at the end of the tape. And I was like, shit, what do I have that can fit on there?
I think that's what it was.
And then looking back now, I'm like, man, I probably had a couple other of his records there. It's like, of all the songs, I don't know how many Elvis, I think I maybe put one other on, one or two of the tapes. It's like, why didn't I pick something else? I mean, it's an okay song, but I had some that I liked a lot more. But yeah, I'll own that one.
Dave, get back to your point, and you can explain it. Better Days, Garfield, right?
Oh, yeah, Better Days. Yeah. No,
Okay,
yeah,
I'm just
that's a good point. That's a good point. Graham Nash's first two solo albums, both of those, I think Wild Tales and I can't remember the other one. He grew his hair long and had a beard and all that kind of stuff. But those two, both those his first two solo albums were really, really good, cover to cover. I had both of them and loved every track on that. But Better Days is one that was always one of my favorites on that. Just the lyrics of all of that in that album was amazing. But getting to the Elvis Costello, I have to say, Mike, I probably even years after we parted would not have ever listened to Elvis Costello had it not been for the songs and stuff that you exposed me to. Now I can't say that I bought albums, but I had a few songs maybe downloaded or borrowed or whatever, and so but I liked this song a lot. Maybe not 37 years ago or whatever, but today I listened to the crap out of this song. I really did. I told you before that I kind of like that punk kind of beat and everything. I like his voice. I like how quirky he is, and no, I really forgot about this song altogether. But I listened to it quite a bit here in preparation for making this video. So it's a great song.
Yeah, okay. And then of course, Mike, and I don't know why we did this, but you started the second side, but I think it was because of the 2 minute thing.
Maybe
That
so.
Mike's like, I think I got a short song, and Dave and I were like, okay, just put it on. For whatever maybe reasons we had, like
Well, and then like we just did here on our last playlist, the long and short of it, that second side was exactly that. Let's play all these long songs and a couple of these short,
right.
Oh yeah.
It was
So,
absolutely that. So
right. And then this is Mike when I first learned about Mike's obsession with Squeeze.
It
And then the Hangover
continues.
Strikes. Now, I will say the second side really is a tour de force, so to speak. It could have been our long, so to speak, of our tapes, because we get, when the Hangover Strikes, In the Cage, thank you, Mike, Silence Eye, Summer of '68. But all those songs are at least 5 to 7 minutes longer than
longer than
6
that.
minutes.
There's seven to
Oh,
8.
and I forgot to clap to, which we will get to clap to. Long live Paulinzania. But and John Barleycorn Must Die. All those songs are long, at least 7+. So
Right.
it's kind of funny that we all kind of fall into that, not even thinking about that. Like, oh, but the songs went together so well. I mean, all these songs seem to gel. They're bombastic, they're long, and so great songs. My favorite song on that side that really always got me, that I always forget, is Summer of '68 by Floyd. I put In the Cage in because that was Mike's influence, because that's when I was really, once I was exposed to that album, I just listened to it, Lamb Lies relentlessly. So that was one of my choices. But my other choice was John Barleycorn. Everyone knows I love my Traffic. So, but yeah, great second side for sure.
I need to speak up for When the Hangover Strikes first. Yes, it is true. I was pretty obsessed with Squeeze, and honestly, I still really like them. If you listen to this stuff, they're very talented. If you've ever seen them live, the guy with the higher range voice is a really good photographer, really good guitarist. That's Glenn Tilbrook. And
let me stop you for a second. Dave, do you remember seeing Squeeze? You don't remember that, do you?
I don't.
It was Roger Waters. They opened for Roger Waters.
Oh, really?
really,
Remember on that tour they opened for Roger Waters. Anyway.
Wow. Anyway, yeah.
What
Radio Chaos. Are you talking about that?
Okay, yeah. So that
yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
So that at that time, that was still a band. A lot of these reflect where I was then, obviously, and also the Hangover part. I totally got that part. I was having a lot of those, and it's a very slow, easy song. It's like if you were having a hangover listening to music, that might be about all you can handle, depending on the level of the hangover. And they have a lot of songs, Squeeze, about partying and drinking and stuff. Like maybe the uglier sides of it. They did another song called "I'll Never Go Drinking Again," which I like even more than this, but it wasn't out at the time. And it's basically it's like he's like, I wake up and all this is how terrible I feel, and all as a day, I get in the shower and the sound of the water just makes my head hurt and all this stuff. But by the end of the song, he's back at the pub. It's like I'm never go drinking again. He says throughout it, and then by the end of
For
the song, he's
me,
back there.
another one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, poor shaken one, like the poor hangover guy. That pour me another one. Yeah.
Didn't
Anyway,
didn't Emerson, Lake and Palmer have some song like that about like I'm tired and I want to go to bed, or some kind of like a after getting drunk kind of party? Yeah, we'll have to look that up. The ELP had Emerson, Lake and Palmer had a song like that. But I think, Mike, you have a penchant for, and we've seen this over the last several playlists we made, that bluesy, sultry kind of song. You kind of tend to like want to get back into doing something. I know we had it on like the Sinead O'Connor, and then the Linus and Lucy kind of that slow jazzy bluesy kind of thing.
Christmas Time Is Here. That one.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Sharon McLaughlin. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you kind of like to go there sometimes with that sound and that type of music. I don't have,
I like to mix it up. I like the fast stuff too, but yeah.
No, yeah, you did. Yeah, you went from Elvis Costello to this. Yeah, so it's a lot from one extreme to the other.
Well, Dave, you went with your Silence and I, which we all appreciate. Alan Parsons, you're infamous. Oh, you've had him on before. But then Long Live. Do we want to get into the Long Live, Paul and Zania? Not Clap
Well,
Here's my only Clap 2 story. I was working about 5 years ago. This kid comes in. He's 20 years old. He's into Kanye West. He's into this. But his dad teaches a course about the Beatles. One day he comes in and he buys records and he shows me. He's like, "Hey, Jose, have you ever seen this record?" "Oh, Clap 2? Oh, I've seen that record before." So Dave, because they used to think they were the Beatles. People used to say, "That's the Beatles."
Oh, really? They tried to imitate or do?
Oh, but they actually got that was the Beatles. Like the Beatles did the Clap 2.
I remember this. They weren't doing a lot of promotion, and they didn't do like many live shows, and the style could be thought of as similar to some of the Beatles, especially later stuff, or like their, whatever, Sgt. Pepper's, all that stuff. And and so this rumor started going around, and the record company I think it was Capitol, totally capitalized on that.
Oh, yeah.
They kept the myth going to sell more records.
And we knew nothing when you bought that album, Dave, trust me. And I know you own the album because I didn't own that.
I did, yeah.
Where did we get that album? Where did you get that?
Probably at Apple or at Half Price. Remember it?
Okay.
Is there another place like?
Right, on San Pedro.
Yeah. So again, the long song, we got those 5 songs, and then we had the 2 short ones on either end. But remember, we were talking a 45-minute tape, right, on one side. So those 5 songs are taking up 40 of the minutes, probably at least. So 8 minutes each. After the In Cage, I wasn't that into maybe the Genesis at the time, but learned to appreciate them more. But In the Cage, I mean, that's why I focused earlier. I was talking about Tony Banks and the keyboard and stuff on that. It's amazing. And then I think I just wanted to go into my wheelhouse with Alan Parsons, and because it has that orchestration in it towards the end and builds to that, I like that kind of stuff. That is kind of one of the things I really like. So I thought, well, let me play a long song, Silence and I, and I thought after hearing some of the stuff in the Cage, maybe it would go well with it. Kind of did, and then going into summer of '68, I liked those 3 songs in a row. It was way cool. There was something I was going to say about the summer of '68. I didn't own that album. Adam Hart Mother, was
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, Mike
Okay,
owned that.
so I didn't have that one, so I wasn't exposed to that song, didn't know about it at all. And then even over the years, I don't think I ever went back and went, oh, there's this really cool song off Adam Hart Mother or anything. So for me to listen to this week, it was like new Pink Floyd for me because I didn't remember it. I didn't remember it or anything. So that was way cool to be able to go. And then the lyrics of it were pretty weird. He's talking about like, I guess, being with a girl after a show or something, and
How do you feel?
there'll be another one at the next city or something. Yeah.
I love that little part. How do you feel? Oh, such a great song. And I don't know why that doesn't get more exposure more for Pink Floyd, you know, of all their songs, you know, that's one of my top 10 Pink Floyd songs. But you know, most people would not put that as their top 10 because they just had so many other great songs. But for me, and it's not even the, you know, If is played right off Adam Hart Mother, you know, Fat Old Son. Who plays this? I was gonna check to see if they ever played it live. They might have done it when they did it played with the symphony, but I don't know.
Was
Yeah, I don't know.
was
Okay.
Waters with them in '68?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I used to think
I mean,
that the singer was sorry.
no, I meant David Gilmour. Was David Gilmour with
Yeah,
them?
yeah.
Yeah, and see, I used to think he was a singer on this for years. It's actually Wright sings on it. He's
Right.
singing a couple of songs. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what ones now. But yeah, I love that song too. I don't want to talk just about mine, but I bought that record. It was like one of the last one of the early ones I bought, and it is kind of an oddball record. It's like has this like really trippy thing with a guy eating breakfast and recording of him eating breakfast. I'm assuming he's on some kind of drugs at the time, the way it's shaped. But then this song and If, I was like, oh, that's great. They're all like on one side. Fat Old Son, you mentioned. So that totally was like, that's why I got the most listening. And I got to say, for me, I got to say, people act like everything began with Dark Side of the Moon, which I would never argue is anything but a masterpiece. But there was so much great stuff before. I mean, Metal, that is a masterpiece. And you know, it's and then if you kind of go back further, you get into Sid Barrett years. But this one, I think, is you're right. It's overlooked. I like obviously In the Cage, Genesis of Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I like all those songs, and that's obvious. I'm having to look at my list here. Silence and I had that record too. I loved it. Eye in the Sky. That whole record's good. And I was trying to remember because I hadn't heard it in so many years. It starts out really slow, but then has this really upbeat part in the middle. And I like that. And then I guess is about it. Yeah, and we get Barleycorn, which is also, I don't know if I think I was into Traffic before you, but it definitely, I think we reverberated off each other a little bit because I put some Traffic songs on those tapes too. And that was one of my favorites. It's another reference to alcohol and other things, but anyway.
Yeah, and then of course the Long Live, and then the capper, of course, is Prison Farm, National Lampoon. I think that was another. Let's put something on to end this tape kind of thing.
Yeah, this says it was 1 minute 35 seconds, so that's probably it. And I'm sorry if I can go back again. I would speak up in favor of Long Live Paulistania.
Okay.
I like. I'm not saying I like everything by Klaatu, like that Calling Occupants of Interplanetary. I don't know. That didn't work for me. But this one, it's like, yeah, it's like the society that's like crushed under it. Crushed. It was like the Roman Empire, you know. It just it fell apart, and it was like it's hearing it now. It's like, ooh, thinking about our times. It's like, ooh, you know, where are we going with this nation? But I don't want to get into all that. And then, but it reminded me of this poem. I'm gonna blank out. Let's see. It's a sonnet. Shelley, back in the 1800s. And I have it here. It's called Ozymandias. Have you ever heard of it?
No, maybe not.
Okay, well, it's basically, I won't read the whole thing. It's a sonnet, so it's pretty short, but it's about this guy is talking with this other guy who had been to the desert somewhere, and he saw this gigantic statue, but it's just the legs sticking up out of the sands, and then there's like the head, like the grimacing head of some, like, you know, authoritarian or whatever ruler laying in the sand, and on the base of it, it says, on the pedestal, it says, "My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." And you might have heard that before. Look on my works, you mighty, and despair. Yeah, but the whole point of that is just like, yeah, well, where are you now, Ozzy? You know, it's like even the mighty, you know, crumble, you know, over time. And that's what reminded this is like the archaeologist going back and seeing this, this gone society that clearly they didn't treat their people well.
No, it fitted right into this tape. I mean, I think all of that second side is probably, and I'll say this, you know, that is probably the best second side of a mixtape that we've done. At least a top fiver for sure, where everything seemed to kind of just gel and flow well. 'Cause sometimes we all have our missteps, but this one really didn't. And even the prison farm just kind of caps it right off. That like, oh yeah, this was fun. You know, this was a good time. And when you go back and listen to it, it's just so much fun to listen to. And even the Paul and Zania, like you said, you just listen to that song.
Well, it changes so much. I don't know that I like, there's parts of it where there it sounds like there's like horses running or something. And I was like, I don't know. I don't care for that part, but just the fact that they would almost, he'd create this song that would be like an anthem, right? Like, red ball, we're, all in one. And we, it just, that was way cool. And it kind of with that orchestration theme, like Alan Parsons does, it kind of fit that way. But I have a theory. Follow me on this for just a second. So it's a hard song to get through, and it's a hard listen. So I wonder how many times, Jose, since you own the tape, did you you get to that point, you start listening for a minute or two or a couple minutes and going, Paul and Zania now, and you hit pause or you hit stop, right? Now, the next time you go to listen to that tape, right, you're not hitting the rewind button, going to the start, wherever, you're flipping it over and starting wherever you're at. So you're probably missing Talk of the Town in this town and maybe part of New York City every time, right?
Nah,
Why you like Wild West so much? Because when you flipped it over after you got about 8 or 9 minutes there of Polizania and Prison Farm, and you just flipped it over and you're at Wild West.
No, I'm pretty much a
very
completist.
true.
No, I'm a completist. I will endure. And as much as I make fun of Paul and Zania, it's a fun listen. It is just a fun listen, And again, a couple of things, and I don't want to get overly schmaltzy on it, but a couple of things. First of all, like I said, the second side of this tape, if you don't listen to the whole thing, it doesn't feel right. It's just one of those things. I will listen to that because it feels right. And it always reminds you of that time you picked it, Dave. And it was that moment. I was like, oh my God, I'm being exposed to Clap 2. Dave picked this album up. This was what we did. Dave was great at this. I give him credit. He would find an album. He goes, I'm going to play it no matter how hard Jose gives me a hard time. And I'm going to play it because I enjoy it. And I'm going to expose him to it. And not that I was like about to beat you up over it, but you knew, and you were like, I'm going to play this and we're going to listen to it. And a lot of great gems came out of that. This might not be, but I'd never have been exposed to Klaatu, wouldn't be able to talk about him, wouldn't understand anything about it if you had not picked that up. Because there was I'd never heard of this Beatles thing or anything. It was just an album we had picked up, gotten at the thing, and you're like, oh, I'm sure you listened to it a couple times here and there. And you're like, I'm playing this song on this because it fits right in here. Because, yeah. Let's see. Gotta love mom. You can edit that out. But it was one of those things where you had you pick a song, put it on there, and we were exposed to it. And like I said, you had a better bet. You made the Hall of Fame. You had a better batting average of finding better songs and exposing songs to me and Mike that way. So no, I'm not a flipper. I didn't flip. I don't fast forward most of the time. I might have done it once or twice.
Well, can I now address Prison Farm? May I?
You may.
Okay, so Prison Farm was off this National Lampoon record, which I guess was a compilation from their radio show called Gold Turkey, something like that. I don't know if that's a play off Cold Turkey by Lennon, but whatever. Anyway, yeah, it's a very short song, which is probably one reason I put it on, and it was at the end of the tape. Second, I will fully admit that sometimes I just put something on because I really want you guys to hear it, even though it didn't fit in. I wasn't necessarily thinking along those fitting it in lines. And this was definitely that. This is not a song. It's a spoken word thing, and it's a comedy bit. It's about a minute and a half, and it's just to explain it real quick. It's basically where Nixon, like white collar criminals go. It's like, oh, it's so hard. It's like witness the sweltering hellhole, or no, that's two different things. The hot box or whatever. It's like he's like, yeah, this sauna is too hot. I'm gonna go take a dip in the pool. And what's the bridge just in your Jane, Geb? She came, Jeb. I'm talking too much. But I think one of the things I really liked about it is like Belushi's on there. It's all men because it's a prison, but I think Bill Murray, maybe Brian Doyle Murray, some of those guys. But those records, those National Lampoon things, and I had a few of the records. They had people from SCTV, Christopher Guest, who went on to Saturday Night Live and did all those movies like Spinal Tap, and I'm thinking, and then a lot of the SNL people, and I still love it. I was happy to listen to it, but I will totally admit it's like you go through the stuff on the side, and then there's that, and it's just like screeching to a halt. I could have picked something better that was short to fit in on this, but I didn't. Yeah.
I don't think I owned many comedy albums or anything. I think I had one, and it was Steve Martin's Wild and Crazy Guy. But I'll tell you, I probably memorized every single line on that. So it's the same kind of thing as with the comedy ones, is you remember the bits that they did on it. But I thought this one was pretty funny as well.
No, I thought it captured the moment for sure. It was something that's just like you said, oh, here we are. And I think when we were making the tape, you said, I'm going to put this on. And we're like, what? And I don't, like Dave said, we didn't own comedy album. We didn't play comedy stuff. So like, what's this? And then all of a sudden it comes on. So it's a good capper, but I think it encapsulates what's going on there. And that's why I consider this tape.
So what did we do? You have all these tapes and stuff, and we're interested, Jose, in seeing more of these tapes and more of the playlist, especially the ones that maybe we all three contributed on. But I'm curious, how many of the tapes, like, just the song cuts off, like at the very end, like we just put on a song and it's like we get a 2 minutes into it and just, I mean, because back in the day you couldn't time it perfectly, or a lot of the tapes we have just a half a song on that last one, or
No, actually, we are pretty good about that. And I think we kept a close tabs on that. And I know we watched because we would keep close tabs on it. Now, there are times where we would say, but screw it, let it just run out. If it's going to run out, it's going to run out.
Make it, but it doesn't quite.
Right. So there's only and I'll say there's less than about 25% that, because I was listening to one today, and there is like, we played like a James Taylor, and then there was like a Rick Wakeman song. And then I think as it kept going, then all of a sudden he cut off, and you're like, oh, that's right, tape cam ran out. And then I'd remember sometimes we're probably just too lazy, too high, whatever, to go just stand up and say, no, just let it go. We'll get it. And so, but we were actually pretty good. And as you can see on this one, that didn't happen on this tape. It was almost to the thing. Actually, I think we have a couple extra, maybe 30 seconds after the prison farm. Because like I said, all those songs on that side just took up a bulk of that, the second side. So, and that's why, but we did a pretty good job of keeping close tabs on the time, what we put on it. I think you were more of a stickler than I was, Dave. I'm just gonna throw that out there. You're like, oh, we need this. Oh, this was, and then when Mike came, it was kind of the same thing. We just kept tabs of it.
I remember looking through that little behind you there, looking through the little windows, like how much tape is on there.
Yeah, how much?
And you're like, if there was a little, it's like, maybe I can make it. I remember one song of mine that cut off. It was this Elvis Costello song, Beaten to the Punch. And it's one of his early out. I think it was off Get Happy. And it's a short song, pretty short song, but it's like it makes it. Oh, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make it. And like the last line of it, he's like screaming, almost beaten to the punch, but all you get out of it is just like the scream, like and then it ends. And so it's like, oh.
So
okay.
you mentioned how much tape is left, but wasn't there like a counter or something?
I think your tape player had that, Dave. Remember when you got the new?
But it doesn't tell you minutes, but it has, like, the counter would go to some number, and you say, well, when it gets to whatever that number, that's going to be a 45-minute.
Right. Yeah. I think your tape player, we had that down where I think it was because you bought that system and that had it down. I think we had that down now, but I think we did this at my place, and I don't know if I had that or not. But I think that was the time. I think Mike remember looking in the thing like, how much tape is in there? Put a short song on, and we kind of do the math. I think like, oh, that was a 10-minute, that was a 6-minute, that was a, we kind of round off. Not that we were really good at that, but I thought we did a good job of mainly keeping tabs. But I do remember something about a counter. How it would we get close, and we kind of knew exactly where it was going to be. Like, oh, okay, and how many songs we had. So, man, we put a lot of songs on these things. Well, songs were a lot shorter, but this was one of the rarities one of the rarity tapes where long songs were played. Because in going back and listening to these, some songs I don't recognize. And initially, what was the song I was listening to today? It was a song. It's not Freeform. I had that on, but there was a song that I was like, "What is that song?" And I didn't recognize who it was, and I was like, "Oh, okay." So and I have to use one of those apps to figure out who these are. So I have 3 or 4 more to go. I keep looking for old ones, always trying to search and find these lost tapes, so to speak. And it's pretty amazing that I kept them around this long. What do you said, 37 years?
I'm it's like you've unearthed gold. I'm like, now, like, I'm excited about, like, oh, what was on that one? What was on that one? I need to know what they were. And Mike, you mentioned some of the early Pink Floyd stuff too, and I know a lot of that made it on some of the off Metal and Obscured by Clouds, and what was the one, like, what's the one about the, like, what's the one with it's like that, this, like, the crowd, the chanting like you're at like a soccer match.
And oh, that's off Metal.
Yeah.
That one. Fearless.
Fearless,
the crowd. Yeah. Oh, that and what's the deal? That's another great Pink Floyd track, the early ones.
3-4 was another great song because I just listened to it today and I forgot about it. I was like, oh, that's right. And Remember a Day, I know that's on one of them. Remember a Day with
I feel like I put some of those songs on, but I don't know. I think that there's some songs that I liked that you put on, Jose, that I was already way into, so it's hard to remember.
Right. Well, there's
so I may not have put any of those on. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
I didn't talk about the John Barleycorn thing, but I love that song too. Over the last many years. I come back to that. I'm again not a big Traffic. I can't name every song on every album or whatever, but that one and Low Sparks are the two that. But I like John Barleycorn because it reminds me of, for some reason, it reminds me of Jethro Tull, that same type of thing as well, with the flutes and the, you know, all of that kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
always love that song.
Yeah, I'm a little. I like my Traffic, and they opened for the Dead, I think, in '94, and they played Chicago, and they weren't all of them, but Winwood and Capaldi. Anyway, the first night they played, you're like, oh, okay, and then I was thinking they're not going to play John Barleycorn because no, that's crazy. No, second night they came out and played John Barleycorn. So when you get to see it live, it's even that much better. But yeah, that's just such a fantastic song, and to have them play it live, the one song that I think is my favorite Traffic song, I was like, oh, okay. So there's my Traffic song. But overall, you know, before we close, you know, just like to say, you know, I thought this was, I hope this gives a glimpse of people of how we put these things together and how much harder it was back. It's so much easier today than it is back then. Now I press some buttons and I can make a playlist. But how much fun this really was, and really brings back a lot of memories.